Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Our guest already in studio. I just teased out that. Of course, information coming to hand is that Dr. Nyikal will not be joining us right now because they're still held up in Parliament. It has been extended until 10:30. So by the time he arrives here also, we will be winding up. But nonetheless, we continue press with the conversation with our panelists already here. And allow me just to introduce them once again. If you're joining us, we have with us Professor Alfred Omenya, who is a governance and policy analyst. Also, we do have SPA Hesbon Omolo, and also Joshua Kipto. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I trust that you had a lovely day. Let's just go to it because I think it has been a long day in Parliament, as you know it. We had the CS also there trying to elucidate and tell Kenyans what especially is happening with the Ebola Isolation Center. So it is quite consternating that they're saying, you know, this, we are not rowing back at all, we're going full steam ahead. And we had the president also defending the plan today, saying it is being politicized and that it is part of a broader system for national health preparedness. And he says, quote unquote, these measures are intended solely to safeguard public health and strengthen our capacity to respond effectively to health emergencies. So we want just to look at this particular statement, what also the CS has been saying in Parliament. Let me just begin with you, Prof. Alfred Omenya, to just clarify. Since we know also the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he said that, of course, everyone knows it right now, U.S. must keep potential Ebola patients out of the country. Are we seeing also the American first doctrine at play here?
Yeah, thanks, Yadibal. This case is very interesting, and I think is a classical case of politicians interfering, literally pussyfooting in areas that they should not really interfere. And not just the Kenyan politicians, but also the American politicians. Yeah, because the way this matter came to the public largely was Donald Trump and Secretary of State there saying that they shall protect American citizens from any possibility of Ebola infection. And their way of doing that was to set up this particular facility in the country. Of course, then things flared up. And what you're seeing, the reactions and so on has been very, very interesting because what you're seeing on one hand, fellows look at these things from a legal perspective. I know there's been a bit of conversations around the medical aspects and merits about it and so on. Of course, we have issues in the court and stuff. But you look at it, if you look at the Americans, starting with Donald Trump and their own Congress, it was more of a political decision rather than really a technical medical decision, as it actually were, saying, fine, we don't want to risk the life of Americans, so any American who may have been exposed to Ebola will be taken to Kenya, almost suggesting that, really there, people can actually risk their lives, as it actually were. And if you look at the response of Congress, what Congress is actually saying is that they're not really too worried about Kenyans. Of course, they've applauded Kenyan civil society and the court action in Kenya. But what they're actually saying is that, the U.S. does have capacity to support its citizens in the U.S. And all U.S. citizens, exposed to Ebola, should actually be taken home and be accorded that treatment. So they're looking at it just in terms of protecting their citizens, as actually were. If you look at our Kenyan counterparts, of course, starting with the president, we're justifying the American action, which is bizarre. For me, it's not even a medical issue. It has nothing to do with Kenya's capacity to deal with Ebola cases. As the Minister of Health has said quite a bit, we actually have quite a number of facilities, 23 of them. Of course, that's one side of the story. We also have a lot of vulnerabilities, as it actually were, as a country. We actually don't have any certified biosafety lab 3. Ebola is dealt with in biosafety lab 4. We don't have 0 at all, certified or non-certified. And biosafety labs 3, we have a number, but we really don't have any that is being that is certified. In fact, I am actually involved in getting the first one certified in Kenya. So the issue here has not been so much about the medical aspect, but is actually what you might call biological apartheid, as it were.
Yeah.
That why isolate a facility for the exclusive use of Americans on Kenyan soil?
Yes.
To me, I think that's actually the more fundamental question. Of course, we saw the Minister of Health trying to cut around it, but this has been said publicly.
Yes.
From Donald Trump and Americans and so on, that these facilities being set, of course, in Laikipia Air Base, specifically for the isolation, containment of American citizens. And this is a question that a lot of us are actually asking, that in this time and age, is it fair, is it reasonable that you can actually set up a facility for a particular class, for a particular race, for a particular nationality in the country, while on the other hand, we're talking about equality before the Constitution, before we even start looking at the medical merits and stuff like that. I mean, that to me is just ridiculous. It doesn't make sense at all. I would understand, of course, the other part of the argument that, yeah, we are actually building the capacity of the country to deal with this sort of situations. That is actually spot on. But I don't really believe, I'll be on the street, I don't believe Kenya should actually set up a facility for exclusive use of Americans. I think in this time and age, these are issues that must be rejected. Actually, from a political perspective, I'm not even looking at it from a medical perspective. I'm not even looking at it from a legal perspective. Of course, the courts have already suspended this, and they'll be looking at it, the legalese around it. People are debating in Parliament about whether there was public participation. Duale has already said that when it comes to exposure of this nature, then you don't need public participation. The Public Health Act does allow the minister to take action.
To bypass,
and to me, all those things make sense. But the question we're asking, which is more fundamental, is this biological caste system that is being introduced in this country. Apartheid, biological apartheid that is being introduced in this country, where some particular classes of people, are then accorded special facilities. And to make it worse, this particular class is not even a class of Kenyans. To me, I think this is partly why, I'll say it, I'm totally opposed to this idea on that particular basis, that we cannot actually, on our land that is free, on our land that is sovereign, set up a facility to the exclusive use of citizens of another country. In fact, basically, the politicians in those countries are saying, we are setting it up in your area because we are protecting our own nationals. Right. And this has to be rejected, actually, on that particular basis.
Yeah, so we have Dr. Mehmet Oz, who is the administrator of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. He gives his reasons here of why this is maybe the conceivable reason they actually are considering Kenya. And they're saying there are many places, he says, there are many places we can send folks, but sending them across the world, especially when we are not sure what's going on with them, is probably not the wisest move, right? He said he trusted the State Department and Secretary of State Marco Rubio to work out something with Kenya, adding that US also has bases in the United Kingdom and Germany that might be willing to welcome them. Let's just hear from you, FCPA Hezbollah Molo, on this.
Why not the US? That's the question.
I think I agree to some extent with what Prof is saying. However, I'm not quite sure if that facility is for exclusive use of the Americans. I think what was shared publicly was that it was for the use of both. Of course, the Americans are providing the money, so they may have the upper hand around it. But I'm not sure if it was strictly for the use of Americans. I don't think that is right. Maybe that needs to be verified.
To be clarified.
Yes. But besides that, I want to look at it away from politics, from a medical sense. What are we dealing with here? We are dealing with a strain of Ebola virus that is new. It doesn't have any vaccine. And compared to the other two strains of the Ebola virus we've had before, I think there's Zaire and then there's Sudan. The Sudan one has probably about 40% fatality rate.
Okay.
This probably has the lowest, but again, there's no vaccine around it. So in a sense, yes, this is something we need to take very seriously, but also let's look at context. We are looking at a pandemic which has been with us since 1976. And to date, fatalities are less than 20,000 globally. In fact, the highest number is in West Africa with the strain of Zaire that decimated that region around 2014, 2016. So yes, it is something we need to take seriously, but we also need to communicate better. I see this more of, I hear more bravado in how we are communicating around it, but I also hear more of politics coming in, and the real technical issues around what needs to be done to prepare as a nation is lost. And my biggest worry is that DRC is not far from us, and our borders are also very porous. And we have been leading efforts towards conquering that region economically. If you look at some of the biggest entities we have in Kenya here, the equity banks of this world, the KCB, they're operating in DRC, and particularly even in Eastern DRC. So it's important that as a country, we also think of, if this was to happen, what will be our level of preparedness? But even before then, what level of communication are we giving our people? What level of preparedness do we have around our borders? What level of screening the healthcare workers? For me, there is more that needs to be communicated around this pandemic that is not coming out.
Indeed.
In all this, and that is my biggest fear.
And I think that's why the courts also are really pushing the envelope, seeking for disclosure. They want to know full terms of any agreement entered into with the US. They want to know any memorandum or negotiations relating to the facility, the plan, whether there was a parliamentary participation or approval of this. I think it's today when you can see now, this is now going to the chambers to actually discuss this. Right. The regulators, they are not actually in the loop as well. We're talking about county authorities, even like Kipia County has joined Katiba Institute together with the Kenya Human Rights Commission in challenging this particular development as well. So it seems there was no effective communication to rope in Kenyans on what is really happening. Joshua Kipto.
So thank you very much. I think we are dealing with a communication governance crisis. And why I say so is that the Kenyan government has been caught in a loop caused by the American government. Because I think it seemed the position at first possibly would have been confidentiality in order not to cause panic, because when it comes to such communicable disease, you see, if you look at the media coverage of the same, not just here, but global media coverage, Ebola at the moment or previously has always taken a center stage to create a case of fear. I think before COVID, I don't think there was anything that was feared as much as Ebola, and that's it's still intact. Nothing has changed about that. So you have a case whereby the government in this case was caught napping in the sense that they were chasing after the news flow. And the danger then comes, I wanted to answer the question or the issue raised by Professor Omenya. You have a US government that is steeped into America First doctrine, that in their estimation, they have always had this posturing that they are more or less like exceptional and more or less the best among the humanity. And the danger with that, and again, even their own messaging, the American system, especially led by the president, they are always the type to shoot off the hip. And for them, they don't rely on official channels. Donald Trump will post it, he will post about it, they'll even boast about it. So what happens? It puts the Kenyan government or the Kenyan people in a very awkward situation. Because if you have this being a policy, and I think what our government has done has been trying to give a perspective that we are not just doing this because we've been asked by the Americans, but this is an agreement that was in existence even in the previous government. I'm sure you've seen, because you've asked about disclosure.
Yes.
The government has come out even with disclosures that this has been in the pipeline. We already had this MOU signed between the fourth president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and the US presidency, or the government then of the US presidency. In this case, it's a question of Kenyan government seeking to put itself in a position whereby they can respond, because Kenya, just like the other East African region, the other countries within the East African regions, will be susceptible to such. However, they have to chase after the news, because the American news coverage has been, we can't let any Ebola patient step into the US soil. And as a result, maybe we can keep them elsewhere. How do you think the kind of people will react to that? What do you think will be the kind of backlash we are seeing now? So it is anticipated, and I think it is not misplaced to understand why this type of backlash has arisen. It is because the interpretation will be what our government say vis-a-vis the US government. So the moment the US government has already gone ahead of the Kenyan government and issued a statement to appear as if they're insulating themselves and let others appear to be dispensable, because the messaging that comes out, our government has really tried to work backwards. One, they have shown that this is a long-term MOU that has been in existence. Number two, the idea has been, do we have our preparedness level okay? And just
but even scrutinizing that MOU, I mean, the mentioning of the facility, you can actually not find it there completely.
Precisely the point now.
Yeah.
This is now a question of implementation, and that's why I'm saying they are trying to tie what has been on paper vis-a-vis the reality. Importantly, let me take you back during the COVID
implementation if it was not there.
Implementation in this case means they have to justify that we need to set up such facilities, because definitely we have not closed our borders with our truck drivers that go all the way to the DRC. So if we have an Ebola case here, what is our preparedness level? And the lessons that we learned the hard way, especially during the COVID time, is that, remember, there was, in fact, if you talk about apartheid, health apartheid, it was during the COVID time. The third world countries were left behind. So you have a case whereby the third world countries, in which we are part of within this sub-Saharan Africa, to focus on what is our level of preparedness. As I've said, all that is lost in one aspect. The American government has already communicated in a way to appear we are dispensable and to appear that we are taking in on their behalf. That is where the problem has arisen. So that I understand the struggles that the health minister, as well as the PS tried to do a good job to try to give a more or less like a case for, and how our health systems can be able to use and learn this and equip our own facilities based on the funding we get. However, it has come again after the loop, because the US government has already communicated that for them they can't allow their own citizens to come in.
Dibal, the thing is that the Minister of Health told us, and it's a fact actually, that we have 23. We have 23. 1, 2 till 23.
Centers.
Yes. For isolation and treatment of Ebola. Did Kenyans go up in arms when center number 1 was being established? Number 2, number 3, number 10, number 20. Why is it now that when the 24th center is being established, then Kenyans are up in arms? We have no problem with building capacity for treatment of Ebola at all. That is why we have no problem with 23 centers that have been established by government, a lot of them with the support of that same US. In fact, our biggest support in the healthcare area, especially containment of infectious diseases, is the US government. Kenyans have not been up in arms in all those centers that have been established everywhere, including Kenyatta Hospital and Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, in over 20 counties in Kenya. The question we are asking is that why are Kenyans in arms now? And I think we need to be clear. Nobody, absolutely nobody, is saying Kenya does not need to make our systems robust in terms of fighting Ebola. Nobody actually disputes the fact that Kenya is an important player in containment and treatment of even Ebola. In fact, a lot of our doctors are trained in this area, and PS Health highlighted that. I was involved actually during COVID, and it was pretty interesting that a bit of the capacity we used to deal with COVID here came from capacity that was built earlier on in dealing with Ebola. So no Kenyan in the right mind would actually fight additional capacity for engagement of the disease Kenya, of course, is a regional center, for international organizations, including even the UN. And we expect that Kenya would actually play that role. And personally, what I'm actually saying is that we need to isolate what the issue actually is and why Kenyans of sound mind are opposed to establishment of this particular unit in Nanyuki. It is specifically apartheid. That's the only reason we are opposed to it. We are saying we don't think it makes sense in this time and age and our constitution and our sovereignty for another nation to come and establish such a facility for exclusive use of their people, while actually our own people and other people can actually not use it.
Yes.
That is the issue. That's the bone of contention, and you see that is what government actually needs to deal with. Of course, I agree with my friend and the rest that of course, if it wasn't our big-mouthed big brothers outside there, nobody would have bothered. Would have just had the 24th treatment thing, and then people would have realized that this one tends to take Americans. So again, I agree that the mess has also come from that side. Yeah, but the issue is actually more fundamental. That even if we discovered that later, it would have still been wrong that we actually have a facility here for a country that is rejecting their own people.
Right. So if we're trying to really clear the fog out of this situation that we are in, because we see everyone is really opposing this. Even hearing the sentiments from the chambers as well, most of the legislators, they are opposing what is going on currently.
The U.S. Congress is opposing it.
The U.S. Congress as well is actually, against it. So the question is the center really speaking to the periphery here? Is it a matter of misinformation as it is from also the ministry of the government so that Kenyans can fully understand what is going on? Everyone has bugbears and fears around it. So why would they hear, the cry of the people? I mean, it's a democracy that we're living in, isn't it? Because you hear what the minister is saying, that whether you like it or not, this facility is here to stay. So it is being, crammed and shoved down our throats.
I think there are two issues here we need to appreciate. First is the Americans spoke ahead of us, and for understandable reasons. America is facing midterm elections very soon. And the balance of things in American politics. So there's a lot of politics that is local there. But besides that, Americans are first looking at the interests of their own people. And therefore, it's America first. That's understandable. Where I would have a problem, and I've listened to Prof here, he says it is apartheid. It's about the Americans. It's for exclusive use of the American people. Now, that's where, if that is the position, I would agree with him. But if the facility is for use, not just for the Americans and but also for Kenyans, and then there'll be no problem.
Correct.
The other issue is the arrangement that we had from way back when President Uhuru was there was around biosafety, was around disease surveillance, and it was not specific to Ebola. So it was broad in terms of what it was looking at. And therefore, that was an MOU. So anything that falls within that space coming up years later would still fit within it. Except now, it needs to be then aligned appropriately. But beyond that, for me, I want to look at it in the broader sense. And there is what, I know diseases are sensitive, but there's also the aspect of materiality around certain things. And there was a reason why I gave certain numbers. In the entire world history, since the first Ebola case of 1976, we've had less than 20,000 deaths. Globally. And of those numbers, over 56% of those numbers were in West Africa around 2014, 2016. That is very important. And that strain of the Ebola virus is the most lethal because it takes out, the fatality rate is between 60 to 90%. It's the highest. The next strain of Ebola that has been difficult to handle as well is what they call the Sudan virus. And I think they have had a few cases in Sudan. It's more prevalent in Sudan and Uganda. And the rate of fatality is between about 40 to 60%. Then the last strain is the current one, Bundibugyo something. This strain, Bundibugyo. It takes between 25 to 36%. That's a fatality rate. It's actually the lowest. But the most lethal has a vaccine. This one has no vaccine. And the fact that it has a very long incubation period, 3 weeks before it even shows signs. By the time then you go through what they call, is it the dry period, then you have the wet, which is now the last part. You don't know how far people would have moved. So for me, I think beyond the conversation around why is this thing coming to this particular area when it is already in 23 other areas. When we had COVID in 2019, many Kenyans don't know how many centers were set up, including very highly sensitive places for just managing COVID outbreak. But the beautiful thing is that when you're dealing with a pandemic, the worst thing is to have a population panic. And therefore, certain pieces of information cannot just be thrown around the way this one came out. And I think the way it came out, it sent a very, very wrong signal. And even now, even if you are meaning well, you are struggling to get the critical information that needs to get to the populace, which for me is very, very important. But now, how then you deal with that, you must then craft a very good communication strategy. You must be able to communicate better. You must be able to explain better. Have more openness around information that is shared. It's not enough to say that this is what was signed in 2015 in terms of the overall umbrella MOU. What are the numbers we're dealing with here? If the US is funding this, to what extent are they funding? If this facility is being set up in Laikipia, for example, why Laikipia? And I think the reasons they've given, besides what they say, the population density, which Laikipia town itself is a bit dense anyway, but that region generally is less populous. Then the runway being long, then the fact that it's within a military setting, then it also means that within military spaces, sometimes discipline and order is easier to establish, and therefore containing some of these things could be easy. But how has this information
been
come
relayed?
on? It's chasing what is already out there, and therefore it's sometimes very difficult for the right information to flow. But my expectation is that beyond the explainer that the CS had this afternoon in Parliament, there has to be proper communication to the public, a proper, maybe whether it could be an official communique that just gives a chronology of things, how they began, where we are, how we need to prepare as a country. What
even the tone and the posture of how you deliver this, you appear to be very combative. You know, so the issue is, I wanted just to look also at some of the implications that we can look at the political implications of this and already the economic implications of this in the country. Because we know there is a blowback. As we speak right now, I think, is it Bunia Airport has been now opened, is back to normalcy. So activities are bound now to be happening. It had been closed to try and contain what is currently happening. But we've seen truck drivers, you know, borders have been closed. It will have economic implications down the line. But looking at the political implications, especially for the current administration with this, because this could be sort of a Waterloo. People will try and see where are we really placing our interests, truly. Is it Kenyans first, or it is, you know, the other far-fetched peripheral, you know, entities outside the country that we are taking their keen interest and not our citizens in this country? What, from your own assessment, would be the political implications of this?
So thank you very much. I think now, being in a political season, what you expect then is that you'll have an opposition having a field day. A field day with this. And in this case for them, they will simplify the messaging. They will reduce it to a case of the government of the day is bringing Ebola to Kenya. Simple. That is the message. If you look at the headlines, how they have been screaming, it's as simple as that. And I think for majority of Kenyans, they operate with the clickbait. Whatever appears, the details are lost. No one engages on this. And again, the nature of the conversation is technical. How many of our viewers or how many of our citizens knew about the 24 centers or the 23 centers that Professor has referred to? I don't think people are aware of that. So the new circle will be then that, oh, this is the first time we are setting in this and we are admitting Ebola patients and all those. So the opposition will definitely run with it, and you will have then, and which you are seeing at the moment is the government has to manage it. And I think for me, so far so good, the PS Health FN Oluga has really been doing a lot of good for the government in trying to break down the message, make the citizens understand what is the net effect, what are we seeking to achieve, and what are the risk factors. So for the political purposes, it only comes at a wrong time, because this is the time where, when it comes to politics, it is about the sound bites. You know, in politics, you don't have a lot of airtime to discuss and to the way we can talk in such a forum. If you talk about a news item, when you run through, say, Rigathi Gachagua was in a place, he mentioned this. You so quickly he had a statement, and then the statement goes out, and then every opposition in every rally, whether it's a Sifuna-led team, whether it's the Kalonzo-led team, that will be their talking point, maybe for the next 1 week or 2 weeks. Now, then the government will be in back foot, whereby they'll have to explain themselves. And I think for me, it's easier for the government to use the professionals in the sense of, for example, the PS, the CS, rather than politicians. Because there's a danger here. If you have the political team within the government then speaking, they may in a way even create more conversation that do not serve its interest, because the moment you speak about it, then the more the coverage, the more the conversation around it. But when you bring it, because for the government only needs to explain itself in terms of what are we seeking to achieve, what is the history of this. And I think it is an opportunity for the government to sell what are the strategies that are in place if this happens. I think what has been missing in the communication, especially from the government, has been Kenyans are exposed in one or another by virtue that we have a direct trade line with DR Congo. Our port, Mombasa port, is one of the major arteries towards being a transport corridor, goes to the heartland of Central Africa, specifically Eastern DRC. They all pass through here.
Yes.
And the people running this would be 75% Kenyans, whether the truck drivers, the turn boys, or even the technical personnel. So I feel that is the missing opportunity for it, if they can twist it, because the opposition will just make it simple, that we are bringing Ebola to the country. But the government can then come back and say, would we sit back and wait? How about if we get the first instance, if we get the first case, what are the levels of preparedness? Would we wait for how we suffered during the COVID time? Because it took us off guard, and it was a question of running after what can be done. So on the political aspect, that would be the kind of a thing. Lastly, when it comes to the political condition around this, our politics is very cyclic. This will be a news item that will run for a week or so, until something happens.
So to the ground.
Until something, until something bigger happens. You just need one more thing, and that is actually even the stories. Actually, if you look at the social media, even World Cup lineups are now taking a bit of time, 30-40% of limelight. Who is going, who is not going?
Very true.
Timings about the World Cup matches. What time will they be? So for the political messaging, it's a short window. I suspect as we go to the weekend, that will be the high of it. And then,
but have you noticed the way also, the political tone and tenor also has really gone down? So no more vocals, no more 2 times, 1 time sloganeering that we can hear.
Because now we are getting into the the real political space. The reason why you don't see this sloganeering is because each of the teams are deep into now crafting teams. Because the government, led by the president, has to look as to how do they craft a team that will carry the majority of what was the remnant of the Raila ODM and new entrants. The opposition is lost in the question of who is the candidate and who is not the candidate.
We'll come to
and actually for the opposition, the worst bit is that the emergence of Sifuna. What happens?
All right. Good question. Still on it, because the government has to come out very clear on this.
Right.
The opposition, they've been given a powder keg. It's blowing up on their face. And we can see, they always say that a lie will travel half around the world before truth puts on their shoes. So the reaction of the government also on this was quite slow on the uptick, if you may say so, because they've let all this, bad wagons run away with the with the issue before coming out to clarify, which now they're really, really struggling. So the question I really wanted just to pose and ask at this moment is that you talked about the preparedness. We learned from the COVID-19, as it were.
Right.
And I think also the Ministry of Health came up with a robust policy on preparedness when it comes to pandemic. But it seems, looking at what is happening right now, it could be woefully inadequate in trying to contain a pandemic as it stands. Because we've not really been given even maybe a drill or something like that to know as a country how robust and how tight is our health infrastructure.
Yeah, Dibala, I think what you're raising is an important question. And I think, as my two colleagues are also saying, you know, Kenya is a very fascinating country. And in fact, just today, I was telling people that Kenya ni nchi ya maajabu because, let me just say it, I was in Kemri, I went to Kemri for the same things, these containment things. And Kemri happens to be my neighbor for like the whole of my life. I had no clue that Kemri had the facilities that they had in there. Here I was, I'm an extremely exposed Kenyan. I had no idea at all. So my point is that, especially the Ministry of Health is a very interesting ministry. That ministry has extremely interesting capacities that you may not find in many parts of the world. But then the way that is communicated to the public, you know, is actually pretty interesting. And my own little interaction with that ministry, you know, makes me very proud as a Kenyan. Actually, I think we have built quite a bit of capacity, and we're continuing to build them. Yeah, but of course, generally the way that is communicated becomes an issue. And like I was saying, the first time I interacted with this was during COVID. I was in the presidential team that was doing quite a bit of strategies for containment in slums and informal settlements. And one of the things that was very clear was that Kenya was actually surprisingly had surprising capacities. And like I was saying before, a lot of those capacities had been built over time through this. In fact, Kenyans were fighting COVID in West Africa, in Sudan, many years back, in DR Congo. Yeah. And quite a bit of capacities have been developed. And even as we self-bash and bash our nation and so on, we must also appreciate the progress. Even when the Americans are saying that fine, I mean, they're choosing Kenya. The truth of the matter is that they're choosing Kenya because Kenya really, in the region, has the best capacities and some of the most robust, capacities in dealing with this. Of course, like I was saying, I mean, we still have a lot to do. For example, as I was saying, we don't even have one biosafety level 4 facility in the country, not even one. And of course, that's the one that would be ideal for things like Ebola and so on. But we have a number of level 3s and so on. Yeah, so we definitely have that. I think for me, what is lacking in the country generally, and it's not just Ministry of Health. I've even told my colleagues at the university that our relationship with the West, you know, we need to be more strategic. We need to know what we want out of those relationships. Because I'm telling you, go to any research facility in this country, go to any university in this country, I can tell you, majority of what the guys are doing together with the West is actually what the West came and wanted to do. If you ask my University of Nairobi here, even those Cambridge and so on, if you ask them, guys, what is your strategy and how does the West fit in your strategy? That is something that's lacking all the way from the village headman to the best institutions of this country, all the way to the presidency. That is the US coming to tell us, this is what we want, and we just proceed to implement it. Because I'm putting myself in a situation where, I've told this, in fact, I was just telling the guys at the university, that it's time now, as a country and as researchers, that we reject some proposals, because they may not be in line with our own, interests and strategies. And I was telling us, guys in the university, develop your own research priorities so that when France comes in, when the US comes in, you can tell them, this is what we're planning to do as University of Nairobi and so on and so forth. And to me, this is a quagmire we've got involved in here, that despite our capacities, despite our strategic interests as a nation, we didn't have a framework where we tell the US that we like what you're proposing, we love what you're proposing, but as a nation, this is the direction we are actually moving towards. We don't mind having an additional facility in Kenya. We don't even mind enhancing some of the facilities that we actually have in Kenya to accommodate your people, to accommodate all these other nationals within the UN and others. But to me, I think that is the problem, so that we end up with the West literally dictating to us what we need to do.
But it does depend also, how did we come to the table? Did we come with this conventionalized framework of Messiah complex syndrome, you know, that we are looking up to you to give us direction, to a pale in hand, and Africa has been on that posture for the longest time. Maybe we need to break out so that we don't even read the details, you know, as long as it's coming from the, you can show it. So, let me hear from you briefly.
I think where I come from, there's a saying that when a stronger person breaks your mom's spot, you don't blame the person. You actually chide your mom for having placed it in the wrong spot. So generally, that is the manner in which we relate with the West. But I just wanted to say that at the end of the day, first we need to ask ourselves, how can we engage better with the West? And I think it's not just on the issue of outbreaks such as Ebola.
Correct.
Because even now, as we speak, there is just so much we can do with Ebola in terms of containment measures.
Right.
The biosafety lab that we want to put up in Laikipia and anywhere else is level 3. What can it do? It can only detect, it can only do the basics of just confirming whether you have, this is really the Ebola. But now when you want to meddle with the virus, look at it, try and develop vaccine, do all those level of high-risk engagement with it, we don't have that capacity. It will still have to be done elsewhere.
Right.
So either way, they will still have to find ways through which they can move those samples, having confirmed they are probably the ones that are here. Probably Laikipia Air Base will be the route through which they will take them out. But that aside, how are we communicating as a country? Do you know, for example, the BAL, that we have a toll-free number that we are using for Ebola that the Ministry of Health has set up? *719#. Many people don't know. So there are issues about how we communicate with the people, especially the frontline people that really need this information. I want to believe there could be some channels through which the healthcare workers are informed, but so should be the general populace. So I expect more of better communication around the Ebola, but the politics of the day is not helping. First, the bad politics that came from US just muddied the waters. But then locally here, there has been the perception around the current government, especially how it relates with the certain segments of the country, especially areas where the former deputy president seems to have more persuasion. And Laikipia could be counted amongst those spaces. So it creates a lens through which things can be looked at, and what may be a simple and good conversation then is lost because we take a political angle in how we look at things. And I think that is a tragedy we are dealing with. But I think all is not lost. For government, I think the focus should be ruthlessly communicate effectively. And I think, like Kipto has mentioned, PS Luga has been very, very steadfast in responding to issues, in just trying to break down the complex things that people need to understand so that we appreciate where we are. So we may lock Laikipia, for example, and say we don't want it here, and the courts may side with us. But what are we doing about our Kenyans who are driving trucks from Mombasa to DRC? Are we saying we stop goods from moving from Port of Mombasa? Is that what we are saying? Are we saying we stop aeroplanes that are coming from that part of the world? Our expatriates here who are working in DRC, do we stop them from coming back until we have this matter under control? And some of them are working in Eastern DRC. So I think the most important thing is that let's have that level of preparedness, but let's bring it out in a manner that does not reek as if we are mere puppets of the American government. We need to communicate what is our end of the stick. Even if America is taking 70% of that genie, where is our 30% in this that we can say, okay, they brought the money. So they may have more say, but we have this, which is helping us to deal with this matter. For example, yes, we provided land So the equipment, the facility that will be set up will remain in our soil. We have access to it. We can be able to do those testing together. We have a framework through which we engage. That level of communication then gives assurance that we are not just puppets in this arrangement, but we are partners. So I think those are the kind of things that needs to come out for the buy-in of the public. But also it's for all of us to appreciate that ultimately Kenya is all of us, and we all have a responsibility to ensure that even amidst the negatives and the bashing here and there, what we all know that is right, we must try to communicate so that we raise our level of preparedness.
Indeed, indeed. Right. I think we've beaten this matter down to the
just,
ground, unless you have something else.
Yes. I just want to, yes, I did mention that actually Kenya is a ninja ya majabu. I just want to throw in a statistic out there, just for context. We have what we call biobanks. Biobanks is where you keep samples of these totally infectious diseases. We have got 5 accredited biobanks in the entire continent of Africa. 5 accredited biobanks in the entire continent, from South Africa to Algeria to Morocco to Senegal and so on. Guess how many we have in Kenya? Guess. 5, all of them. There is no accredited biobank in any African country outside of Kenya.
Wow.
These are interesting statistics that our people need to know. And the things we're proud of. You know, your samples will either be brought to our biobanks here in Kemri and Moi, or be taken to Europe. Not in South Africa. The most developed of the Kenyan countries has an accredited biobank. Yeah, so we're also very proud of some things that we have in our country. And as I was saying, Kenya ni nchi ya maajabu. We have got a lot of stuff here that nobody actually mentions. And yes, even as we do the bashing and so on the other hand, of course, we really do appreciate progress that has been made, particularly in that Ministry of Health.
Yeah, I think it's a very good revealing, shining factors that aside from what we're being told, that, we have a very dilapidated health infrastructure still. There's some good infrastructure that, I'm learning as well from you. But yes, unless Kipto wanted to just chime in, I wanted to turn the crack now to the issue that also is in the public domain right now regarding boarding schools, in light of what happened also with the Utumishi Academy. People were saying, and it's been a debate of the House today, that boarding schools, we need to reconsider, boarding schools. So we outdo boarding school. It is an outfit of the colonial system, as it were, from the beginning as it is. So do you think this conversation that is coming to bear right now, in light of what happened to Utumishi Academy with the 16 girls who lost their lives in the Inferno, should be considered? I think some of the veteran educators have been proponents of scrapping boarding schools. Joshua Kipto.
So thank you very much. I think one of the biggest, if I'm to use the context of what Professor says, Kenya ni nchi ya majabu, one of the majabu aspect of Kenya, our peculiar nature is that we never deal with systemic issues. Our response is always knee-jerk. Our response is always hysterical, and our response is always deep grief, but for a very short period of time. We will speak highly of what needs to be done, but that conversation never lands in the right places where policy directions are done. And why I'm saying that is because I don't think this is the first time we're talking about the boarding schools menace. We are a country that never goes into the depth of understanding the context. How did these boarding schools happen? Where did we start, and how did we find ourselves here? This is basically a colonial edifice that has been there, sustained. I think as a country, we lack what I say per se to be a sense of identity, governance identity. We lack. We basically carried forward what we got from the colonialists. How much did we move away from? Why I'm saying so is because there are 2 aspects you can refer to. The aspect of boarding schools was because of basically parents then being unable to provide for their children. So boarding schools were seen as sanctuaries and avenues within which kids can be taken care of and focus on education. Again, it was under the cultural underpinning then, that is in the 30s, 40s, 50s, when education was still negotiable. So it was a case of the colonialists and the missionaries saying, let us seclude the kids, keep them away so that they can focus on school. But that has been 70, 80 years down the line. Have we changed that? Nothing. That's one bit. The second bit has been, when we were looking at the CBE, if you are seeking to change the curriculum, one of the major selling points of CBE was that it is a system that would wish to shift the boarding school mindset to day schools. So whereby we equip the day schools to make them efficient and effective enough that we don't have to send our schools miles away. Has that been achieved? I don't think so. And have Kenyan people, for example, accepted the need to move? I don't think so. Actually, for us, what we do, we always break down our public systems and privatize our public problems. We assume if we have this private school here, I can escape this menace that is in public schools. That's what happens. Secondly, we then fight for the few slots that are there. That's why it is cutthroat competition to get kids into these high schools, especially when you talk about national schools and what have you. Importantly, when it comes to safety, how much have we gone into? Because if you look at the building that was shared, two anomalies. And I would really want Prof to speak about this. What are the school boards doing when they are doing boarding schools? I don't think they look like dormitories that have been equipped for safety. Nothing showcases that. It is more or less like a close. You just close one door and everything is done. Because for Utumishi, the door was closed and that was it. If you look at the fire tragedies that have happened over the past 30 years, Kianguli, it just needs the arsonists to close the door and that's it, finished. Importantly, if you look at the CCTV, if it is authentic for that matter, beds were in the corridor, meaning outside the cubicle. So meaning there's again a case of congestion. So if you are to have this conversation, my only prayer would be, are we having this conversation for the sake of whipping up emotions and hysteria? Or are we having this conversation with a genuine desire that the policymakers would sit and say, let's have a rethink. Let's look back and say what works, what doesn't work. Our country is always this kind of a system that is more or less comfortable with the status quo. And I think that's why once in a while you've had the president very frustrated saying that, what is the scale of our ambition? How much do we seek to change? How much do we want to do? How much do we want to overhaul and and just get things done? So it is really painful. In fact, I don't know, it was by coincidence because before I started addressing this, I was looking at that very emotional picture of this parent. I think he's called Dennis Nyakeri, who on the material day had almost, in fact, he was shirtless. And you could see he'd lost it. And he was giving his story that, look, I just need to know where my daughter is. And that's not just one case. Those are 16. In fact, there are 19 souls lost. Is that the end of it? I'm not sure. If the facilities, this is just a sample, and we have only been able to know about it by virtue of the tragedy. And mind you, Utumishi Academy is not just any other school. If you were to put it on a plane, this is a school that is funded by the National Police Service. It is very sad that one that is heavily funded by an institution of national stature like National Police Service.
It's an offshoot of Utumishi Academy.
So can we then cascade it down? Can we cascade it down to look at the other extra, whatever extra county schools? So I would want Prof to speak about this because I saw the minister speaking about having a common uniform. Why haven't we talked about the building of the dormitories we have? Why?
Right, but just beside that, I think we need also maybe, as you're saying, there are deeper issues aside from the policy, the infrastructure. There's a whole environment and a cloud of behavioral change that we cannot really lay a finger on, because once we know the outcome of this particular case with the 7 girls, right? Nine as it stands right now. Then it really goes to show it's not about the exams. There's a deeper simmering issue that has not been addressed in this country. I think maybe we had a band-aid solution with also Matiang'i, still with the same case that we have with the Inferno really flaring up, but nothing has actually happened as far as the psyche of these young children is concerned. Mental health that people have been mentioning. How are we approaching this? Maybe from people of intellectual provenance like you can tell us. Are we trying to reflect it not just from the surface area, but deeper level? What is really happening with the young people? Is it the shorter attention span that they cannot go to deeper immersive learning? And is this the end of education, as it were? That maybe we need to change the whole outlook of how we're approaching education in this country?
Yeah, I think let's look at it from, again, from what Leto has actually put quite eloquently. You know, Kenya is fascinating in this way that, again, generally, globally, Kenya has some of the most intelligent human beings on the planet. I'm not talking about in the country. Whether you check universities abroad, you check the level of performance and so on, I mean, there's no dispute that the intellectual aptitude of Kenyans is actually extremely high, including those in government. But the one thing I normally find pretty interesting is how Kenyans diagnose problems and then how they deal with them. You see, because with all this intelligence, we can't ask ourselves, can we have an objective review, say, of boarding schools in Kenya, and basically all types of schools in Kenya, and can we have some factual information about these places? Can we have an objective study of the behavior of these kids and why they ban the schools, and see whether there are patterns and lessons and insights that we can have. We can look at this from a historical point of view. We can look at it just now, you know, in terms of where these incidents happening, and is there a correlation, so that eventually when we suggest solutions, we'll be able to know that what you're dealing with is the problem, you know, instead of these knee-jerk reactions and as such. Of course, we have general observations that can guide such a study. A good one, let me just put two theses on the table. We know we've not heard of day schools being banned. It is boarding schools that are being banned, generally. So the question would be, why aren't day schools being banned? And they're also being occupied by the same Kenyan students anyway. Why do we actually have this particular incident largely on boarding schools as opposed to day schools? That's one. The second one that we can put on the table is that if you look at this thing vertically from a historical perspective, we are seeing the incidents concentrated now. So the same school, you find that it was not banned for 60 years. But now suddenly, schools that never had these sort of situations, now we're talking about Lenana, we're talking about Malanda, we're talking about, in fact, many national schools. And we're increasingly having these incidents. So the question we should be asking is that, why weren't Lenana boys banning their school 10 years ago or 15 years ago?
Yeah, what has changed?
What has actually changed? And to me, these are the sort of things that we need to look at. You know, actually have a proper study that starts looking at some of these issues, and that starts leading us to longer term solutions. So I agree with you that we can argue at a very general level that there is something happening to these human beings,
yes, regardless
of you know, the schools they actually went to. And then we start asking what actually changed that could be resulting in this.
Right.
Yes. So in that regard, I'll actually use my own school. And incidentally, I was asked by Matiang'i when I was minister to investigate an incident in Alliance. And incidentally, this still ended up being related to the quality of the boarding spaces that they had over time.
Okay.
It was actually playing a role. And there are many factors. If you look at it, you see, earlier on, as you've said, from colonial times to even our times and so on, basically, we used to cry when school would close, because that environment was the most beautiful environment that we ever seen.
Because you don't take sausage, let's hear from Esbon, then we take a short break.
And we took sausages. Back. Now it's the other way around, because not necessarily because the place is bad, but because these kids now having sausage at home and eggs and whatever it is. Now you go and give them kawaida tea and things like that that we celebrate. For them, that is suffering.
At least them that are taking sausages.
Just, we need to take a short break. But I wanted just to clear up with this particular topic so that we circle back with, just briefly, just give it briefly, yes.
I think there are structural issues, and I think my colleagues have already alluded to them. But the reality is, if you go to those schools, you look at the behavior of students today. The same school you went to many years back, you were 800 of you. Today there are 3,000 students.
Very true.
The facilities
overcrowding is
there's overcrowding. Children are sleeping in very horrid spaces.
True.
Children are avoiding even meals so that they don't have to go for long calls.
Yeah.
Because the toilets are horrific.
Terrible.
Not anywhere near what they have at home.
Exactly.
The standard of living at home has improved
Is way more
over
superior.
decades
Than
it was years back.
And the schools have gone down.
The schools have gone down. We have cases. I had to pull my children from certain schools because of overcrowding. Very good schools.
Yeah.
And had to settle for a space that was humane.
Right.
So I think there are certain things we have to address. If it's about admission of students, why would you as a ministry admit beyond capacity and you have capacity numbers? And even if that happened because we were struggling with other things, why do you as a principal take an additional amount of money? I hear some take as high as 100, 200,000 to admit more students. The shit that follows is none of your business. Then you have a very, very toxic environment for learning. So these are the things that are making our learning institutions to be spaces where children don't want to be in. When my girl told me I don't want to be in this school, I was horrified. I said, you have taken to the best school.
It's a good school.
She was, no. It is not. And then you ask yourself, why would we stop parents from looking at the dormitories where the children are learning, are staying? Why don't they want us to be there? It's because there are certain things they're hiding from parents. And I think we need to be honest with ourselves. But beyond that, charity begins at home. What examples are we showing at home?
Right.
We are also setting very bad examples.
Exactly.
So these children go to school knowing there are ways through which we solve our issues. And we've set the tone at home. So the society has also got into moral decay.
Very true.
When you were growing up, you could be corrected by a neighbor.
Yes.
True. Very true.
Not today.
All right. Okay, let's take a short break, and when we circle back, of course, we shall be looking now on the political scenario as it stands. We have now the opposition also calling for a science-driven pick of flag bearer. It's boiling down to a science. We'll see on the other side.
No. They should use witchcraft.
Science will not work.
It works better.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m.
Good morning.
You have my rent?
Leo jioni kama tutakuwa tumelipa rent, nauza hii simu yako.
Hamna pesa. I need 3 G's to make my nails today.
Sasa hivi natuhusu aje?
Can I order now? Do you ship? Can I get blinking ones?
Mimi nilikuwa na trade. Nimewekelea kitele yangu. Kitele yangu na trade. Nikaikunywa maji.
Oh my God. He left me.
Nitumie ni line. Uko nje kuna wifi.
Why? Hi-Fi?
Wait, so what do we call this dish again?
I have no idea.
The cucumbers are there specifically for my beauty routine.
Tangu lini kero umeka kwa beauty product?
Na ameenda.
Tunafaa tukuwe na logo yetu. Like, si ni brand already.
You won't entertain divas. No. I'm not dealing with a man child.
Amazing. Nishapenda hii energy.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on TV47. Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
My father used to tell me that a hotel is the home for travelers. I guess I forgot that. Recently, it's been more of a mirror of my own ambition. We might fail. We will probably fail, but not for a lack of trying. So for the last time, and the first time, welcome to Connect In, the best experience in Eastern Central Africa and its environs.
Saturday at 8:30 p.m. on TV47. Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m.
This is a very serious place.
I see that.
All right, welcome back. I just wanted to show you tomorrow's publication of a Star, which also is a very interesting staple for our conversation here when we're talking about the science of choosing the flag bearer. This is what is on the front page of a Star. Karua backs calls for science-driven pick of flag bearer. Stans puts her at odds with camps allied to Kalonzo and Gachagua. And we had just teased out that, and we want just to buckle down a bit and talk about it. It seems also from the opposition side, when we talk about even the name, yeah, it's been such an issue to just get a name. One full-blown year has gone. Still, they were struggling to get a name. Now it's boiling down to a science on who will be a flag bearer, right? And time is still ticking on, you know, towards the general election. So we're actually halfway through the year as it stands right now. Do you think they are actually going to get their flag bearer and come, you know, whole stock and barrel together as the united opposition without splintering? Joshua Kipchum, briefly.
So thank you very much. I think that one is a time-tested activity. I'll take us back to 1992. That's what caused the split of Ford, where you had Ford Asili and Ford Kenya, Jaramogi versus Matiba. In 97, I think at least they didn't even attempt or pretend to come up with a common flag bearer. They went their separate way. Whatever they went their separate ways, they were hanged independently. From Kibaki, Tungilu, to Amalo, to Raila, and what have you. In 2002, that was the first time where you had a new phenomena emerging, whereby you will have this choreography where everyone shouts and speaks about we need scientific, some will say we need a nomination exercise, whatever, all manner of cacophony of trying to come up with ideas. Then political avalanche happens, then one or two major players force a lineup of some kind, which then equally creates a split that may not be significant, but has a role to play. And when I say in 2002, if you remember, the Rainbow Alliance, which had Raila, Kalonzo, Saitoti, and the rest, was an outfit on its own. Then you had NK, who had already settled on Kibaki.
Yes.
And then you had Nyachai also running his campaign.
Right.
But that was the real emergence of Raila Odinga as a political juggernaut, because he saw an opportunity. It needed a rally in Uhuru Park where all these voices and players were, and then he dropped the bombshell. He says Kibaki tosha, and that was it. But it didn't stop, for example, Nyachai to run his campaign and consolidate Kisii. Fast forward to 2007, ODM had the same issue. But at least for them, Uhuru bolted out in advance with his KANU, and then the remnant had a case of a public fallout. Same case as 202, whereby you find, and I call it an avalanche. It's more or less like a bubbling of some kind that happens. Then within no time, one formidable person emerges and then is declared. But that also creates a schism. And that's why you had Raila then being the candidate for the Pentagon ODM, and then you had ODM Kenya with Kalonzo, which had an impact, because if Kalonzo was with Raila, despite the stealing and the botched election of 2007, I don't think Kibaki could have gotten away with the stolen election. But with Kalonzo there, he kind of sanitized for him the botched election. Now, come to 2012, something different happened. You now had hardening of coalitions, whereby you have two major coalitions, and that I can see from 2012 has become now almost a norm, whereby you had the Jubilee and then you had the CORD coalition, so that a third party candidate is lost in the mix. That has been the story in 2013, that has been the story in 2017, and that was the story in 2022. So what I then anticipate, if I'm to mix the two periods of time, it would mean as we head into 2027, you will have two hardening coalitions. The issue would be, where do all these players fall in? These noises will come, go, but I can resoundly predict some of the opposition guys will join government. Because within the government side, it is settled. The ticket is settled. You have the president, no doubt about it. It is almost settled about the running mate. We are almost getting to a place whereby I don't think, unless a miracle happens, Kindiki is the running mate.
So, some of opposition.
So with that ticket settled, it's much easier. So that means there's no fight for number 1 and 2. But in opposition, it's all bets. Anyone can be number 1, 2, and everyone is posturing. You have also, in fact, you have the problem then of, for example, Rigathi Gachagua having his matter still in court, whereby if he's declared to be viable to vie by virtue his impeachment by miracle again, by chance it is declared that it was unconstitutional, then he portends a bigger problem to the opposition, because what will stop him from vying again? Mount Kenya is such a big vote block. So what I see is that you will have the same scenario for 13, 17 and 22, whereby the opposition will harden into a coalition of its kind. There will be fallouts, and the few that will fall out from that outfit will cross over to government. In 2022 it happened. When Raila Odinga, the late, purported to give positions of would-be cabinet ministers, the Alfred Mutuas and the rest had no place. Yet they were oscillating around Uhuru. Even Mudavadi, even Wetangula, all of them. What did they have to do? They just cross over the other side. So that's what we are going to see. So I foresee an opposition that is, and that's why for them right now they've been quiet. And that's why, as we were talking, I said, one of the biggest problems with the opposition is the emergence of Sifuna. Actually, Sifuna is more of a problem to the opposition than the government. Because 3 months ago, Sifuna wasn't a factor. But now he's forcing his name into the space whereby if opposition has to come up with a ticket, if they are to look at Western, the name Sifuna keeps cropping up. So what do? Sifuna has eaten up the constituency for Natembea. Sifuna has messed up, for example, for Eugene Wamalwa. Sifuna has been a problem even to Kalonzo himself. So what do you have in place? You have an opposition then, even for Marthas and the rest. So for me, I see it as a case of it will happen into the coalition bit, but you will have crossovers.
Thank you.
The season will be open for signing.
Right, let's hear from Esmond. What are you reading from the science?
I think the science conversation is very palatable to the weak candidates.
Correct.
Therefore, they'll really go for it. But I would also look at it this way, that 2 candidates or 3 within that coalition basically are holding buckets that can fetch water from the lake, and they can actually take water home. The others are holding what I would call, I don't know how to call them baskets, but those porous baskets that can never hold water. And therefore, if they are not the choice candidates for the opposition, they're basically unable to transfer their political capital to the next candidate. And I think that is where what Kipto is saying, some of those candidates will move, because they'll be under pressure, their bases will be under attack, and some of them may also not have enough resources to sustain certain ground campaigns. So it's important that the choice candidate, yes, science is good, but that science must be tempered with reality, or must use parameters that are closer to the reality on the ground. And of course, our politics is largely political. The conversation and the unity of opposition candidates has been more against the president as a person, and therefore the campaigns have been personified. It's more of, we don't like this person. So it's more of one term, and one term means Ruto out. Very little in terms of agenda. This is what we want, this is what we want. No, this man is bad for the economy. The hows are not there. And when you christen a campaign from that level, then it becomes a personality-based campaign, which can be very, very difficult to navigate, because then it goes tribal.
But isn't that what is really tickling Kenya's ears? You know, they don't want to hear about policies and what this is our plans. We want to hear 1 term, 2 term, firebrands. You know, if you don't have that firepower and you're firing all cylinders, of course, then that is not politics. You know,
of course,
how then do we just make a turn on this sort of brand of politics that we do have in this country?
I think it's an unfortunate situation, 1 term, 2 term. But beyond or behind that 1 term, 2 term, what is it that you're bringing in terms of alternative leadership style? And I think that is where issues will become very difficult. So unless they can sustain the 1 term narrative, avoid the conversation around issues, then maybe they'll take it to the election. But remember, the president has been doing what he's doing. So he may also then get to the real politics. And you saw when he tried a bit of it, he just threw a few jibes.
Politics.
Yes, things, it was.
Yeah, even us, we didn't want to hear.
It became too murky and everybody is scampered. So I foresee a scenario where if they go the science route, they'll be playing into the hands of the incumbent.
Yeah. Right. Let's hear from Prof.
Yeah, I think I agree with my colleagues, and I think we have this sort of politics that focuses on the presidency and the deputy. And I think the opposition needs to really rethink that politics. Yeah, because I look at, for example, this ODM splinter group, the Babu Owino and Sifuna. I think that team is perfect for winning Nairobi Senate this time round and maybe Nairobi governor. But really, it is not presidential. It's really not at that level. The point is that the general population in Nairobi is sort of anti-government. They're generally in the opposition. So they're likely to vote these people as it actually were. But then, of course, when you're looking at the broader national politics and the voting patterns and so on, you really wonder whether some of those candidates can actually marshal votes across the country. That's number one. The second thing that I find very fascinating with all politicians, and there I think I can give a bit of credit to the science people. I mean, you go to Kisumu to hold a rally. People show up. Then now you think you can win the presidency. But then you're not considering that actually a week after you've held the rally, your opponent goes there to hold a rally. And even a bigger crowd shows up. Yes. So I mean, you have a crowd. I tell guys, today in Kenya, honestly, you need to be totally an imaginative politician not to get a crowd. There are ways of getting crowds. Some guys do it for entertainment and so on. Some do it for money and so on. But a crowd you will definitely get. So you know, we see these guys like, oh, there's a crowd. I'm Sifuna. This guy can run the country. This guy can actually win the presidency. Where? Which presidency are you talking about? And on this one, I now shift to Gachagua.
But before you even go to Gachagua, that particular, the movement itself.
Yes.
Yeah, would one really call it a hot air? Because now if you plumb deeper to find what are the real critical issues, is this just, you know, the fetishization of a personality that people now are really hyping around?
No.
And will they really run out of steam afterwards? Because yes, if there is no credible, substantial matters are put down on the table for people to discuss, I mean, Kenya will just grow tired of a one-term, two-term...
And that's what I'm saying, that we, on this one, I support the guys of science. But can you go a step further and actually figure out a way of confirming whether these are your real supporters that you can translate into votes? And that's what I'm saying, that Gachagua then becomes very interesting because he puts this very simplistic thing on the table, but which makes sense. That bring your tribe and your tribe mates. If you cannot convince me that that you actually have a tribal following, I have no business, you know, taking you seriously as it were. And he said it. Matiang'i leta Wakisi, Kalonzo leta Waluya. I think if you're to ask now, you can imagine these guys negotiating with Sifuna on the other side, and you'll be asking Sifuna, iko wapi Waluya? Who are these followers of yours? I mean, put simply, who are they, and can we verify them so that then we can start discussing these takes as it actually were? And I think this to me is where we'll start having schisms in the opposition, because we do have leaders in the opposition whose following is undisputed, despite the fact that it may not necessarily be nationwide. We know Kalonzo controls Eastern and quite a chunk of the coast, and it does have that following. It has been proven through electoral cycles. We know that actually exists. We cannot say the same of Sifuna. We cannot say the same of these other people that are being said. Even Martha, separately, we cannot say Martha has a following because it has never been proven at all. It has never really been proven. Now enter Gachagua. We can actually say that Gachagua has a following because, you know, really you cannot dispute that a huge chunk that supported the president was influenced by him. And we are starting to see the impact of DCP in central Kenya and so on. So I think that's what's going to be the past bone of contention between these opposition guys, where fellows will be saying, like Martha is saying, let's use science. And the other person will just laugh, say, you went to Some.
So
you know?
the Gachagua devoid of DCP party, then he wouldn't really have a voice in Mount Kenya as it stands, because now we have also UDA, and which was largely in the Mount Kenya region, but diminishing as it is right now. Everyone is now trying to actually make sure they are saving their backs.
No, not just UDA. Remember, Mount Kenya is where we also have Jubilee, Uhuru's own party.
No, but we're talking about a lot of legislators within the Mount Kenya region. They're under UDA ticket right now.
Yes, they're actually under UDA. But then you see, I mean, just in terms of the arrival of DCP there, and there have been a few elections that has happened in the region that starts giving you an idea of the support of DCP in that area that cannot be disputed.
Right, thank you.
So my thesis is simple, that we do have these politicians in the opposition with almost solid support that cannot be disputed. And then we have other politicians who are going to rely on science or whatever it is, but whose support is neither here nor there. I think it will be incredibly difficult for these two factions to agree. For somebody to say, now Sifuna, you can be our president, you know, on the basis of calculus, and me, I'm bringing hard support.
Right. Even as we just remaining a few minutes so that we can give very pithy statements and then we close up. Yes.
Maybe just to add on what Prof has mentioned, if you look at Rigathi Gachagua, you can clearly see elected members of parliament behind him.
Correct.
They may be elected by UDA, but they are fully behind him.
Correct. True.
You will see several MCAs who are elected behind him. So he has a following that is real.
Exactly.
Now you go to Kalonzo Musyoka, you find the same.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, when you go to Matiang'i, in his base,
you don't find the same. Correct. True.
In fact, you'll hardly find 3 MCAs.
That is true.
You'll hardly find 3 or 4 MPs.
Very true.
So that is a warning sign. Now you come to Sifuna, you will struggle to get...
there's none.
There's none. So that is where you will start looking at Kalonzo and Gachagua as the real deal. These other ones are probably relying on science and a support base that is so amorphous, you cannot put any hand on it. And I think that is where Sifuna lies.
Right.
So you also ask yourself,
so what is the euphoria around? You know, it's not
the euphoria is
remember
into a tangible number.
I think the euphoria is
remember the Gen Z stuff, and we had faces in Gen Z, including people like Makoure and others. Would you say that those people actually have a following? But there was euphoria.
The euphoria.
But there was euphoria.
I think the euphoria around Sifuna and the team that followed him, including Orengo and Babu, is on the splinter group in ODM.
Right.
And that is why they are very, very careful not to disassociate with ODM fully.
True.
In fact, they continue to tag along as if they are the real ODM, because they don't want to create their own house, even though they have very few, if any, of MPs behind them. And I think it is because of that fear that once you pitch tent, then now you start the real political organization. And it's a lot of hard work, it is resource constraining, and over time, signals will start appearing, whether you are your own person or somebody is funding you. And I think those are the fears that come when you get into certain spaces. For now, the euphoria and the umbrella of we are the real ODM Linda Wananchi is covering a lot of things around how they operate. Once they get to a space where they are now on their own, I think things will start unraveling, and it is very, very heavy.
Thank you. Thank you. Lastly, let's hear from Joshua Kipto.
I would want to disagree with them on one aspect. You know, you cannot say the Sifuna-led team is more of euphoria. It's a fact that they have succeeded in a way to take away the limelight from the Gladys Wanga Oburu-led team. And that's why they had to even discard the name Linda Ground or whatever you call it. Actually, I feel that they napped too long. They have actually forced the president to then do the Raila work. You know, Raila was this politician who cobbled a coalition that was more or less like a rainbow coalition. It had almost every aspect or every part of the country. Now, the president is being forced to do it individually. Why do I say so? The president at this point will have to seek out Western independent of Luo Nyanza. His proposition for Luo Nyanza will be different for what he gets from Kisii. The last person who had that ability was Raila. Raila had a closed belt. The colonial Kavirondo was under his lock, all the way from Western to Luo Nyanza. It was not, in fact, he succeeded from 2013 to close in also Kisii ODM was still dominant. He had ability to close in from mass speakers. If you talk about Turkana, Samburu, then go to Coast. Now the president is being forced to individually seek out those regions. He'll have to negotiate individually. And that's why if you see the president's strategy, it has been, if he goes to coastal, whatever the coastal conclave, it's a conclave on its own, Joho and the team and the governors. If he goes to Luo Nyanza, it's a Luo Nyanza conclave. If he's going to Kisii, it's a standalone. So he's being forced into that. And this is simply because you have this faction of Sifuna and the rest. I agreed, though, with them on something. Now the rubber is about to meet the road. Sifuna and the team have succeeded to audition themselves to the table. Now, will they be the lunch or will they be the partakers of the lunch? And as I've said, someone like Sifuna has caused havoc within opposition because he'll get into a table that he has people who are actually not happy with his emergence. So as a result, and again, let's wait for the court case of Rigathi Gachagua, because if he gets off the hook through the court process, then it's a whole mess. We start again the entire opposition. Because it would mean, right now, Rigathi is just almost like Uhuru Kenyatta. What is making them potent in opposition circle is they are more like the tactician. They are working with this Mount Kenya bloc, offering whoever, they have the ability to whip the opposition and say, you will be the candidate and he will be the running mate. But if you make him a possible candidate again, that's another story again. So what I'm looking at, we are in June. So coalitions harden between August and December. So as to how all these noises and the rallies, what it will lead to, let's now start counting down. Actually from July, I don't think it will get to August. From July, then you'll start seeing movements. It's just like a transfer season now. It's about to open up. So from July to October, of course, the president will be walking around being the chief scout. The president only needs to wait. The moment, for example, Martha Karua pushes this agenda of scientific and the non-scientific room fight, the president will tell them, no, don't struggle. On our side, we will give whatever you want. If you're science, we have science. If it is non-science, we still have to. That's what it's going to be.
That's what Kipto. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate FCPA Hezbollah Molo. Always a treat having you on the show as well. And Professor Alfred Umenya, thank you so much for the cogent discussion we've had. I know. So, yeah, we'll wait for that particular moment. If the impeachment case, goes the other way, we shall be here also to analyze that.
Or if it's not determined.
It will be,
if it's not determined, Gachagua will run.
Yes.
Yeah.
A different kettle of fish altogether. Thank you. Thank you. Also, thank you very much for your
And if Gachagua runs,
you've been watching Prime.
Hands down. It doesn't.
Of course, TV47 Prime News, and this was The Insight. Thank you. Have a restorative night.
Once Gachagua